All right, welcome to another episode of Mike Reads. We're going to do another review. I'm really liking these reviews, so I might start just doing a 5-10 minute review every Friday, and just post that for our Friday, so just to give a break up from our reading, especially considering right now, I don't know how this is going to work out when I post, but right now we're in the middle of a really long and exhaustive work by Adam Smith called The Wealth of Nations. So we're going to take a little bit of a breather from that, and I think we might start doing that on a regular. Today I'm going to be reviewing Thomas Sowell's Black Rednecks and White Liberals. This is a book I just finished reading. I want to say I finished reading it about 3 or 4 days ago. What it is a series of almost entirely non-contiguous essays that are pretty much standalone essays that tackle a variety of different subjects. I really like the first essay. It's basically just the first essay is basically just an extension of Economic Facts and Fallacies by Sowell, and then I guess they're kind of interrelated. There is a method to how he has ordered his essays, but really they're entirely standalone essays, with the exception of the last one, which wraps everything up, which takes the remaining essays. It's basically his summaries chapter, because anyone who's read Sowell knows that his last chapter is usually summaries, conclusions, and a chapter on what you can make of all of what he's written. And that basically ties everything together. And like I said, there is a logic to the order. And I guess the final essay is probably the only one that doesn't really stand by itself as a separate entity. It is really the only dependent essay. Every other part of this book is relatively independent, with possibly the exception of the 2 or 3 page preface. I'll give my review right away. I think this is one of Sowell's least impressive works. I really like the first essay. He kind of is saying a lot of dog bites man in his middle essays. Like, he has an entire, one of his essays is entitled, "Are Jews Generic?" which is kind of interesting, but I mean, honestly, there's a whole lot of dog bites man in terms of the content. It's one of his books with, and I think this is telling of Sowell. Sowell, when he writes his books, uses a ton of data, has a ton of research, has a ton of practical application. And as a result, his books tend to have a ton of citations, hundreds, if not thousands of citations in most of his books that you can actually check and review his sources, which I really like about his style of writing and the way he puts his books. I don't think this is, in terms of the content, there's not a lot to disagree with, but again, I kind of was almost put to sleep with some of this stuff. And there are some points where he contradicts earlier points. He does talk about race in certain cases in a manner where he is a purveyor of the notion that your race does not determine your standing or your outcome, and we should not try to, as a nation, adjust some cosmic injustice in order to even out outcomes based on race, because that, of course, would be racism. But there are certain times where he actually does kind of fall back onto a concept of almost groupthink. I don't want to say it's necessarily identity politics. So the content isn't as good as he usually writes, and even the content that is entirely agreeable is a lot of we already knew that. He spends an entire chapter on Germans, and a lot of that chapter is just World War II information, and it's not even revealing or new information. It's not a whole lot of database information. It's a whole lot of basically that the Nazi Party was bad. And it's like, yeah, okay, it was, but so usually when you come out with new material, it's new material. So I liked it. I don't know that I would necessarily recommend it all that easily. If you're a Sowell reader and you want to be, you're a completionist, you want to get your 20 heart run completed, I would definitely say read it. It's the first chapter is actually really good. The first chapter is Black Rednecks and White Liberals, the eponymous essay, and I really like that essay. I really, really like that essay. I would honestly say if I'm going to recommend this book, it's going to be on that essay, which I don't think that you can extrapolate in any other manner. So as far as my numerical value, if I'm going to rate on a scale of 1 to 10, I'd probably honestly give it about a 6.5. I do it still sticks to his writing style in terms of his use of language, in terms of his vocabulary, in terms of his grammatical structure. It's still very I don't want to say easy because that understates it. It's just really well written in terms of its use of language, but in terms of the content's very blasé, to say the least. I'd say, no, not to say the least. That's probably the truth, is that the content is just blasé. And as much as I enjoyed almost all of it, a whole lot of it was, so I wasn't blown away. And usually that's the case with Sowell, and that's my expectation. Perhaps I'm grading on a scale with him by giving him about a 6.5 out of 10 on this. Perhaps I need to do like the Beatles and have the Beatles scale, because even with the Beatles' worst albums, they're not Fs. They're probably C pluses, B minuses. So in order to actually properly rate something like, Sgt. Pepper's is going to be a 10, Abbey Road's going to be a 10, the White Album's going to be a 9.5, Magical Mystery Tour is going to be a 9, Rubber Soul's going to be a 10, Revolver is going to be a 10. So you kind of have to like adjust your scale for the Beatles. I think I might have to start doing that with Sowell. So if I had a Sowell scale of 1 to 10, then I would say Basic Economics was his 9, and this is probably like a 3 or a 4 for Sowell. I'd say. So as I said, Black Rednecks and White Liberals by Thomas Sowell, I give it about a 6.5 out of 10. Kind of long, but I guess if you're into Sowell, go ahead. I can, yes, that's how I'll say it. 6.5 out of 10. If you're a Sowell fan, I can recommend it. Black Rednecks and White Liberals by Thomas Sowell. All right, so that's Mike signing off.